Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillahi wa kafa, wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'dah wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, we are currently on the 19th of Rajab. We're on the 19th of Rajab. So we only have another 10 days left before we'll be looking for the moon for Sha'ban, because we're on the 19th of Rajab. We are at the Tafsir of Imam Al-Jawzi rahimahullah, and as of this 19th, we are going over the rest of the page that we started from Surah Ash-Shu'ara, the 26th Surah, the Surah of the Poets. Where we last left off, Imam Al-Jawzi rahimahullah, he carries through by saying, quote, with regards to the beginning, Ta, Sin, Mim, we had already discussed the many different names that this represents. After this expression of Ta, Sin, Mim, from ayat 2 to 3, this has already been discussed in the commentary on Surah Al-Ma'idah, the 5th Surah, Ayah 15, and Surah Al-Kahf, the 18th Surah, Ayah 6. When Allah the Exalted says, will they not believe? Due to the fact that they do not believe. Meaning that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would cause himself physical harm by the sadness that he felt and the great sorrow because these people would not believe, and that their unbelief caused him sorrow. And when the Exalted One said, after this statement, if we willed, we could have sent down them a sign from the sky that would have lowered their heads in shame and humiliated them. Meaning that this aspect of being lowered or being low and having the neck bent low, this is from the attributes of the children of Adam, to have a bent neck and to be humiliated when Allah sends His signs. Likewise, Allah the Exalted is said in Surah Yusuf, وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ رَأَيْتُهُمْ لِي سَاجِدِينَ. The sun and the moon, I saw them all prostrating to me. Surah Yusuf, the 12th Surah, Ayah 4. Showing the lowest state, the most humiliated state something can be in, is a state of prostration or lowliness. And Allah the Exalted said that He could lower their heads in shame by a sign that He would send down from the sky. As the Judge, rahimahullah, he said, although this expression is in the past tense, the meaning is in the future tense. It is also important to understand that the lowering of the necks in humiliation is not just referring to them in general, but specifically to their leadership, their heads and their mighty ones, who stand lofty in the earth. Because they need to be brought low. As for the statements that Allah the Exalted has made from Ayah 3 up until Ayah 7, much of this has already been covered in Surah Al-Anbiya, the 21st Surah, Ayah 2. Now those who Allah has addressed saying, do they not see the earth, meaning those who deny the resurrection. How we gave it, meaning it was given vegetation of every kind. Min kulli zawjin kareem, from every kind. Ibn Qutayba said, from every genus and species. Because zawj in this ayah is referring to every genus of plant. And kareem means useful in this ayah. So here, Allah has given us every species of plant that is useful for us to use. Then he says, Inna fi dhalika, indeed in that is a sign. That meaning the plants and vegetation is a sign which shows the oneness of Allah and His might. But most of them are not believing. Meaning, most of them do not believe in the knowledge of Allah in truth. And your Lord, He is the mighty, because He takes retribution from against His enemies, and He is compassionate with His friends. Now the portion where Allah said, and when your Lord called Musa. And so here Allah is saying, وَإِذْ نَادَى. Now this particular expression is intending by it that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would narrate the narrative regarding Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam and his people, because here Allah is making a comparison between Musa and his people and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his people. So when this narrative is given, it is meant to capture the attention of the reader from ayat 10 to 12. When Allah says, He said, Lord, I fear that they will deny me. And so, this is referring to the fact that going forward, He fears that they will deny Him. And then it's also the case that, and I fear that they will try to kill me. In ayah 14. But He, Allah, has said, فَهُوَ يَهْدِينَ, He is the guide. Say Yahdeen, Surah Al-Shu'ara, ayah 62, as well as ayah 78. وَيَسْقِينَ, and He gives drink to who He wills, ayah 79 of the same surah. وَهُوَ يَشْفِينَ, and He heals, ayah 80 of the same surah. ثُمَّ يُحْيِينَ, ayah 81 of the same surah. كَذَّبُونَ, yet they deny, ayah 117 of the same surah. وَأَطِيعُونَ, and some obey, ayah 108. These 8 ayat are all established regarding the different conditions that you find among the children of Nabiyuna Yaqub alayhi salam. But then he said, وَيُضِيقُ صَدْرِي, my chest has become constricted, meaning I've become saddened because they are denying me. وَلَا يَنْطَلِقُ لِسَانِي, and I can't speak because of the lump in my throat, the fear that he feels. Because sometimes when people feel fear, they feel a lump in their throat, or it feels like a lump on their tongue. So then Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam says after this, فَأَرْسِلْ إِلَى هَارُونَ, so please send with me Harun. Please send with me Harun. So here he is asking that Harun be sent along with him as a helpmate. And Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam also expresses his concern that they might hold over him an action that he committed, which is mentioned in ayah 14. And that action being held over him is وَلَهُمْ عَلَيَّ ذَنْبٌ, that incident is to do with the one who he had killed when he was defending the other Israelite. So when he says they're holding over me a fault or holding over me a penalty, it means the one who he killed, they're holding that over him as a charge. And his fear of them killing him. Here, he, Allah the Exalted, has said, قَالَ كَلَّا, by no means. Meaning, this is a clear refutation and a clear denunciation of any thoughts like this that Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam should have. He's saying, this will not happen. They will not be able to have authority over you. So just in that one statement, Allah, by saying Kalla, is saying none of that matters. Fadhhaba, both of you, you and your brother, go. Bi ayatina, with our signs that I've given you. Inna, indeed we. So here Allah is referring to himself in the plural for power. Ma'akum, I am with you. So go, you together. Because we hear what you say, and we will answer you with regards to the claims they make. Now the ayah where it's mentioned, Inna Rasulu Rabbil Alameen, where Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam comes in, and he says at that point, indeed we are a messenger of the Lord of all creation. In ayah 16. Inna Rasulu Rabbil Alameen, indeed we are a messenger of the Lord of all creation. Ibn Qutaybah, he says, although Rasul is in the singular, the plural is being used to express rank and dignity. Just like he says, هَؤُلَاءِ ضَيْفِي, these are my guests. Surah Al-Hijr, the 15th surah, 68. But it intends the expression and use guests. And then Allah the Exalted says, ثُمَّ نُخْرِجُكُمْ طِفْلًا, then He, Allah, brings you out as a child. Meaning children. Meaning children. Surah Al-Hajj, the 22nd surah, 5. As Zajjaj has said, so when He, Allah, has said that they mention, we are a messenger of the Lord of creation, meaning we're bringing revelation. We're bearers of revelation of the Lord of all creation. That you might send with us the children of Israel. Meaning, let us go. We come bearing revelation. So, bring us the children of Israel that we might go and do our worship. The response that they receive is where Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam is reminded by the Pharaoh, did we not raise you among us from the time you were a small child? And you remained among us a number of years? Now the question is, how many years was Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam among the Egyptians before he fled their presence? There are three statements on this. There are three statements on this. One is that he was among them for 18 years. And this is the understanding of Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anh, that he was among the Egyptians for 18 years. The second is that he was among them for 40 years. And this was mentioned by Ibn as-Sa'ib. Number 3 is that he was with them for 30 years. And this was said by Muqatil. Now the meaning of this ayah coming together is Pharaoh is telling him, you were raised among us, and now you're going to show ungratefulness to us and then kill someone as well? And then he says, and now look at what you did. You've committed murder yourself. And how can that be? You are certainly ungrateful. So the expression وَأَنْتَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ, because the expression kafir holds 2 meanings. One, to reject faith, and one, to be ungrateful. The first meaning, to hold that the Pharaoh was referring to them being ungrateful. You are ungrateful because of all of what we've given you. This is the understanding of Ibn Abbas, Sa'id ibn Jubayr, Ata, Al-Dahhak, and Ibn Zayd. But the second understanding is that he means unbelievers, meaning, well, aren't you unbelievers in your own God because you were with us? Wouldn't that mean you supported our gods before if you were with us? This is the understanding that is dual that the Pharaoh would have had, which is mentioned by Al-Hasan al-Basri and As-Sudai. So the Pharaoh held over them what he considered the good favor they were shown. And the second, when he said that you're rejecting us, but you were with us, surely our gods are better. Then Allah the Exalted says, قَالَ فَعَلْتُهَا إِذًا وَأَنَا مِنَ الضَّالِّينَ فَفَرَرْتُ مِنْكُمْ لَمَّا خِفْتُكُمْ فَوَهَبَ لِي رَبِّي حُكْمًا وَجَعَلَنِي مِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ وَتِلْكَ نِعْمَةٌ تَمُنُّهَا عَلَيَّ أَنْ عَبَّدتَّ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ قال فرعون وما رب العالمين قال رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما إن كنتم موقنين قال لمن حوله ألا تستمعون قال ربكم ورب آبائكم الأولين قال إن رسولكم الذي أرسل إليكم لمجنون قال رب المشرق والمغرب وما بينهما إن كنتم تعقلون قال لئن اتخذت إلها غيري لأجعلنك من المسجونين قال أولو جئتك بشيء مبين قال فأت به إن كنت من الصادقين فألقى عصاه فإذا هي ثعبان مبين ونزع يده فإذا هي بيضاء للناظرين قال للملأ حوله إن هذا لساحر عليم يريد أن يخرجكم من أرضكم بسحره فماذا تأمرون قالوا أرجه وأخاه وبعث في المدائن حاشرين يأتوك بكل سحار عليم فجمع السحرة لميقات يوم معلوم وقيل للناس هل أنتم مجتمعون. He, Musa, said, I did the act which you refer to when I was among those who were astray, and I fled from you because of my fear for you. But my Lord bestowed on me judgment and made me among the messengers. That is a favor which has been given to me. On that the children of Israel might come after they'd been slaves and be free to the Lord of all creation. The Pharaoh said in response, and what is the Lord of all creation? Musa said in response, he is the Lord of the skies and the earth and what is between them, if you would only be certain of this fact. He then said to those who were around him, are you listening to this? And then he said in response, Musa, he is your Lord and the Lord of your fathers who came before. The Pharaoh responded with, this messenger of yours which has been sent to you, he is mad. He is insane. Musa said in response, he is the Lord of the east and the west and what's between it, if you would only be certain. The Pharaoh then said in response, if you take any god besides me, I will certainly have you jailed indeterminately. I will have you jailed indefinitely. Musa then said, is it then I can come to you with something clear that might change your understanding? The Pharaoh said in reply, come with it if you're truthful. So Musa threw his staff and it became a writhing snake that was clear to all those present. He then showed his hand after putting it in his cloak and drawing it back out, and it was white to all of those present in the gathering. The Pharaoh said to his chosen ones gathered around him, this is a very skilled magician. He wants to expel you from your land with his magic. Now what do you advise to be said and to be done? They said, wait just a moment, he and his brother. Have them wait here and send out a call to all the cities around to have a gathering, and bring from every single urban center every skilled magician. Let the magicians be gathered on a well-known day. When that occurred, it was then said to all the magicians, are you now ready and gathered? And they responded, yes. Surah Ash-Shu'ara, the 26th surah, ayat 20 to 39. Now, when the Exalted One has said all of this that was given, the matter then becomes more clear. So let us look. He said, when he said, I was from among those who were dhalin, astray, this is firstly referring to the fact that he was ignorant of the condition of the man that he had killed, because he did not know that that man was a troublemaker. So when he killed the Egyptian, the Israelite had actually started the fight, and he was not aware of this. And this was mentioned by Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, Sa'id ibn Jubayr, and Qatada. Some of the scholars of commentary have said it's referring to the fact of him saying, I was ignorant of the matter because Allah had not given me revelation in regards to this situation yet. Another understanding that was also given is that I had killed this individual by mistake and not on purpose. Then Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam says, so I fled from you, meaning I left from among you, because I was in fear of myself, so I fled to Midian, as we know from the commentary. Close quote. Now this is something significant. Now you have to set the tone of this discussion, because this is 3,300 years ago these events are taking place, or perhaps a little bit more. Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam at this time is in Egypt. Cairo has not been built yet. There was no Cairo, there was no Fustat. Al-Cairo is Al-Qahira, its proper name Al-Qahira, which is after the Fatimid king Al-Qahir Billah. When that's around 973, perhaps a little bit more after. Cairo was not built yet. So you're saying, okay, well, what's the main city then of Egypt at that time? The main city of Egypt at that time is Thebes, or the Elephantine, which you have to remember very briefly, I'll mention. The pharaonic Egyptians, where exactly do they come from? Where are these people from? And how significant is this? Okay. There are a number of books that can fortify you with an understanding. One is a big, thick, 3-volume book by a man by the name of Martin Burnell. It's called Black Athena. And he transformed the discussion around ancient Egypt in the United States by vigorously pointing out that the Egyptians were not Europeans that came down into North Africa, which had been a common thought. He said this is not the case. So it was Black Athena's 3 volumes. Another book that is significant that will also be of use is to study the ancient pharaohs. Oxford has a very good set called the Pharaohs of Egypt. Now, Egypt at this point has its power base, and there's another book as well, excuse me, I forgot, that's called Kebr Nagast. Kebr Nagast has been translated in English. It's originally Amharic, it's in Arabic as well. It's a listing of the great Ethiopian kings of the past. It's called the Book of Kings. Martin Burnell, as well as the author of Kebr Nagast, as well as countless other authors, have mentioned that the ancient pharaonic Egyptians were produced by an admixture between the Semitic Ethiopians, who some say either were living in Ethiopia or came in from South Yemen, and the people in the south of Egypt. And this produced the pharaonic Egyptians of history. We know this because the further you get down the Nile, the more pyramids you find. You still have Ethiopians practicing the mummification rituals. You still have the south of Egypt. There's people who still speak this old Medu Neter language and symbolism. You still find it people using the Medu Neter in Ethiopia. This then produces these people of history that we know as the pharaonic Egyptians. So Thebes, or near Elephantine, was their main base at this point. Although by the time of Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam, all of Egypt was unified. So this is their main base, what they're using. So Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam, he comes from these people. He flees after committing what was listed as a crime against him to Midian. Where is Midian? Okay. Midian is located in the same place where Mount Sinai is, in the Sinai Peninsula. Now, the Sinai Peninsula, although geographically connected to Egypt, has only recently been part of Egyptian territory. The Sinai Peninsula became part of Egyptian territory when Muhammad Ali Pasha, the great Macedonian Albanian war general, swept down and separated Egypt through conquest away from the rest of the Ottoman Empire and built his own structure. He then incorporated the Sinai Peninsula into what is Egypt. To which the question is, okay, well, then what was the Sinai Peninsula before that time? Geographically, it's connected to Egypt, but what was it? Who was it with? It was part of Arabia. Arabia is technically, if you look at the Arab tribes and how they began, Sinai Peninsula is actually part of Arabia. If you look at the tribes that are located there, the pottery, as well as the flora and fauna are from Arabia. They're not the flora and fauna of Egypt. Even the sand deposits, the way the sand deposits are laid, the sand dunes, as well as the quality of the diorite crystals in the sand, that is from Arabia. It's not from Egypt. Okay, which is a very clear distinction that has to be made. We're looking at these maps now because these maps are political maps. You have to look at the geographical and cultural significance. So the people, when Nabi Musa alayhi salam flees to Midian, you say, well, why couldn't they just, because the point that would come to your mind may be looking at it with a now because you're projecting from now's understanding, well, surely the Pharaoh could have him arrested because that's still in Egypt. No. The Sinai Peninsula is not part of Egypt. It's part of Arabia. That's 3,000 years before. Muhammad Ali Pasha wasn't even around. So the Sinai Peninsula is part of Arabia. So when he flees, Nabi Musa alayhi salam becomes like a fugitive. He's in Arabia because Arabia is considered by Egyptians as no man's land. The Egyptians didn't even like marching near the borders of that area because it was considered off limits. It's forbidding. It's dangerous. The desert is unnavigatable. Right? So Nabi Musa alayhi salam, he flees to Midian. So when he comes back from Midian, with this revelation he gets at the burning bush and all this other information, right? He comes back to the most powerful country at that time. So that's the scene that you have to set in your mind. There is no Cairo. There is no Alexandria. Alexandria was built by Alexander the Great conquering Egypt, building Alexandria, separating off Alexandria from the rest of Egypt. There is no Alexandria. There is no Bur Said. There is no Cairo. There is no Sharm el-Sheikh. The places that we generally recognize as built-up areas, they don't exist yet. They're not even on the map. Because Egypt's main power base is from Central Egypt into South Egypt. There was no Sudan. There was no Sudan. You had the land of Punt, you had the Kush Empire, but there was no Sudan. There was just one big unified Egypt. It was gigantic, the Egyptian empire, at its height. So you understand that Nabi Musa is coming back to the greatest empire on earth, having being raised among these people, and having to tell them, send the children of Israel among us because they're slaves among you, but we need to go and leave and worship Allah. So the response is, no, you were raised among us. We taught you. How are you going to come back against us and be ungrateful and also commit murder? Because that's what their understanding. This is what the Pharaoh was supposed to commit murder. Right? So now a challenge is brought because Nabi Musa alayhi salam shows the miracles. But to the Pharaoh and to the Egyptians, those miracles resemble magic. Now what response do you take when that happens? You gather together all the people and you say, well, then what we're going to do is we're going to have a duel to decide. And he says, if you take any god besides me, I will have you jailed forever. Why? Well, understand at this time, who is the Pharaoh supposed to be? Who is he supposed to be? He is supposed to be a living representative or incarnation of Osiris, who is the god of the dead. So often you'll see pictures of the Pharaoh when he's supposed to be in the afterlife with his headdress and he resembles Osiris. Sometimes the picture of the Pharaoh will be he's green, or sometimes he's giving supplications or oblations, or sometimes he's receiving something from Osiris, or sometimes he's painted in the form of Osiris. Right? So when you deny the divinity and who the Pharaoh represents, you deny the priesthood, which are the Nasut, because the Pharaoh was considered the chief Nasut, the chief priest. So you deny the Pharaoh, you deny the Nasut, which is the priestly class. You deny the civilization. You deny the Medu Neter. The Medu Neter is how Egypt sees the rest of the world and how it exports its ideas to the rest of the world, its symbolism, its dogma, how they personify nature and they glorify and worship the forces of nature. This is called Medu Neter. This is the same word in English where you get nature. Nature. This is ancient Egyptian, this word. nature. Right? Sometimes it's pronounced nedur, but generally it's pronounced meju, nature. This nature. So to deny all of that is the equivalent of how it is now when nations deny democracy. Because the United States is spreading all that around and spreading. Democracy or capitalism is what the United States' unique perspective is on the world and how they superimpose their will throughout the world. Meju nature is how the ancient Egyptian empire imposed its unique worldview on the world around it. Now, Nabi Musa is coming and saying that's a complete lie. So you can understand the danger this man is in. It's the equivalent of saying that he wants to overthrow the government. It is extremely dangerous. So this dialogue that's taking place, the Pharaoh wants to show once and for all, not only am I going to defeat you, but I'm also going to show that I am the chief Nasut. And that my Nasut, the Meju nature, is true. Our view on reality is true. That what you have is magic, but our magic's greater. Because by glorifying the elements in nature, they personify nature. That's why you see them worshiping animals and things in the sky. They personify and glorify nature. The magic that you have must be a result of something that another Nusut taught you. Or it must be the result of some personification of nature or something that you have. All we need to do is figure out what it is that you have, and we can beat you. Because there is no Nusut that are better than ours. This is the background that we're being given. So, now we return back to the text of Imam Al-Jawzi rahimahullah. He starts by saying, quote, "And this is the favor that Allah had given to me, lest that the children of Israel were made to be slaves," meaning that the Pharaoh at that time, he took them and made them slaves and put them in bonded slavery. Now, the scholars differ in the tone of this ayah and whether Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam was using this as a refutation against the Pharaoh, or whether he was making this statement as a form of confirming what had happened to him and defending himself. And this is the statement of understanding that we have. Because the Pharaoh took the wealth that the children of Israel had and made them slaves. And Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam, coming up in that residence in that country, had some of that wealth spent on him. But Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam refuted his statement because he said the children of Israel was stolen, so it wasn't his wealth at all. Now, the second understanding is that how can it be that if you're killing the children of Israel, that I'm now responsible for this fact, when it's actuality you that's doing it? And my nation seeks to be free. So let us be free, because you have no governance over us, so that we might go forward. Give us our freedom so that we might go. And forget what was the past and your enslavement of the children of Israel. Let us go forward. This is the statement that is being put forward. The Pharaoh's response is, "What is the Lord of all creation?" Now his question is one of surprise and also of rebuke, because he considers any Lord besides him subject to his dominion. But when he's told that the Lord of creation is the Lord of the skies and the earth and what's between them, if you are certain of this, meaning that he created the skies and the earth. So how can you be certain when you have a Lord just like everything else has a Lord? He's the Lord of all creation, the Lord of the skies and the earth. The Pharaoh said in response to those around him, meaning the best of his people and their rank, "Do you hear what's being said?" Meaning, are you hearing what he's saying? What do you answer to this? This is what's being said. So his way of refuting Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam was to ask the people, "Do you hear what's being said? Can you hear this?" But the only response of Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam was to continue saying, "Your Lord and the Lord of your fathers who came before." So the Pharaoh interjected and classified this as madness. But Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam carried on in spite of the interjection of the Pharaoh. Close quote. And what this is talking about is, so this conversation that you're reading, make sure that you're not seeing this as just a stiff conversation. And what is Lord of creation? Right? He's the Lord of all. Right? It's not. It's happening where there's these interjections. What? How can this be? Just like how the normal flow of human conversation happens. So sometimes someone will be talking, they'll be mid-sentence, and you've seen this. Someone's speaking in mid-sentence, and then someone else asks another question, or someone else jumps in. And someone else is finishing their statement while they're jumping in, and then they start to answer the question, and someone jumps in again. This is what's occurring. So there's this whole chaos of events and statements that are being made. It's not just the case that Pharaoh's saying, what do you say about this? Like how it's sometimes shown in movies. And what do you say of this? And one person speaks and he's given full time. He can finish his statement. He can pause. For dramatic effect, he can gesture. That's not how human conversation is working. All this stuff is being said. The Pharaoh turns and he says, can you hear all this? Meaning what's being said. Look at what's being done. Right? So Imam Al-Jawzi rahimahullah, he then says, quote, after this, Nabiyana Musa alayhi salam said, he is the Lord of the East and the West and what's between them. If only you would think. And then he said, so I've come with something clear that you will know and testify to my truthfulness. Now, part of this has already been mentioned in Surah Al-Araf, the 7th Surah 107, up until the statement where the magicians are gathered. And this is called the Day of Adornment, which was an Eid for those people at that time, which we've already discussed. But he said to the people, meaning he said to the people of Egypt. Now, Ibn Zayd claims that they gathered at Alexandria, but this is simply not true. And then further on, the magicians are gathered and they're brought together, in which it is said, when they're gathered together, that they will then say the following. لَعَلَّنَا نَتَّبِعُ السَّحَرَةَ إِن كَانُوا هُمُ الْغَالِبِينَ فَلَمَّا جَاءَ السَّحَرَةُ قَالُوا لِفِرْعَوْنَ أَإِنَّ لَنَا لَأَجْرًا إِن كُنَّا نَحْنُ الْغَالِبِينَ قال نعم وإنكم إذا لمن المقربين قال لهم موسى ألقوا ما أنتم ملقون فألقوا حبالهم وعصيهم وقالوا بعزة فرعون إنا لنحن الغالبون فألقى موسى عصاه فإذا هي تلقف ما يأفكون فألقي السحرة ساجدين قالوا آمنا برب العالمين رب موسى وهارون قال آمنتم له قبل أن آذن لكم إنه لكبيركم الذي علمكم السحر فلسوف تعلمون لأقطعن أيديكم وأرجلكم من خلاف ولأصلبنكم أجمعين قالوا لا ضير إنا إلى ربنا منقلبون إنا نطمع أن يغفر لنا ربنا خطايانا أن كنا أول المؤمنين وأوحينا إلى موسى أن أسر بعبادي إنكم متبعون فأرسل فرعون في المدائن حاشرين إن هؤلاء لشرذمة قليلون وَإِنَّهُمْ لَنَا لَغَائِظُونَ وَإِنَّا لَجَمِيعٌ حَاذِرُونَ فَأَخْرَجْنَاهُمْ مِنْ جَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ وَكُنُوزٍ وَمَقَامٍ كَرِيمٍ كَذَلِكَ وَأَوْرَثْنَاهَا بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ فَأَتْبَعُوهُمْ مُشْرِقِينَ. So that we might follow the magicians if they are victorious, they said. So whereas the magicians came, they said to the Pharaoh, will we receive some special reward if we're victorious in this engagement? The Pharaoh responded, yes, indeed. You will be my most closest advisors and confidants. Musa said to them, you can go first. Go right ahead. The magicians then threw their ropes and their staves, and they said, by the might of the Pharaoh, we are now victorious in our spell. Musa threw his staff, and it completely devoured all of that which they had brought to pass. The magicians then fell down in prostration, saying, we believe in the Lord of all creation, the Lord of Musa and Harun. The Pharaoh said in response, have you believed in him before I've given you permission to do so? No, this must be your teacher who taught you this magic. I'm going to teach you a lesson and you're going to know. I'm going to cut off your limbs from opposite sides and crucify you all. They said, no matter for us, we are returning back to our Lord. Are we to be suffering only for the case that our Lord should forgive us our sins? Indeed, we are the first of the believers to submit. We revealed to Musa that he goes swiftly with my slaves so that you might follow. And the Pharaoh sent forth in the cities to gather together. Pharaoh said, these are a small and tiny people. And who are they to us? Stand warned. But when the children of Israel went forward, and when they were freed and took forward from the land what they chose of, the gardens and the springs, and multiple treasures, and a high rank. And likewise we caused the children of Israel to inherit. And they were followed up to the east. Surah Al-Shu'ara, the 26th Surah, ayat 40 to 60. The Exalted One has said, so we follow the magicians. This means the people, according to the vast majority, are following the magicians of the Pharaoh in their command. And the people were mocking Nabiyuna Musa and Nabiyuna Harun alayhim as-salam. And when the magicians cast their spell, they shouted, by the might of the Pharaoh. Up until the end of this incident. Now the Pharaoh then said to them, this is someone that taught you this. He is your elder in this magic. You will certainly come to know. And this was said with great emphasis. But the magician said, no matter for us. It will be of no harm for us. Because we're going back to our Lord, and the hereafter will be saved because of his forgiveness. And we are the first of believers, meaning the first ones to believe in Musa at this time when he came. Close quote. Now just a quick point here to keep in mind. When you're looking at this whole set of events take place, you're thinking, well, wait a minute. Why are the Pharaoh and all the people that they've gathered on this big important day, they've thrown down their staffs, they've thrown down everything. Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam throws down his staff, it devours theirs. So then why aren't they Muslim? Okay, you need to understand something important. because this is also in Surah Al-Qasas, which we went over, but I'll just review it quickly. If you look in Surah Al-Qasas, the 28th surah, which we've been through, or we at least discussed some parts of it from Surah Al-Araf, one of the things that is mentioned that they had sihr, the people in the gathering had sihr, ala a'yun nas, cast on their eyes. Now, the only people looking at things as they truly were the magicians and Nabiyyuna Musa and his brother Harun alayhim salam. They're looking at it real time as it's happening. So they throw down their staves and their ropes. And the magicians and Nabiyyuna Musa and Harun, they can see them just bobbing up and down. But to the people, including the Pharaoh, whose eyes have been bewitched, they see snakes moving and writhing. So they're just looking. Now, Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam puts down his staff, which becomes a bigger snake, a real snake, which the magicians can see. And it actually swallows all the ropes and staffs. They see this happen real time. To the Pharaoh and everyone else, it just looks like a big snake swallowing smaller snakes. So when they fall down in prostration, the Pharaoh's response is, what is this? This is some type of subterfuge or some type of game that you've cooked up. Because he's in real time hasn't understood what's happened. The magicians have. And so the magicians become the first believers in Nabiyyuna Musa and Nabiyyuna Harun alayhim as-salam. They also become the first martyrs at that point, because they were executed. The chief Nasut will not have these people go against what he's revealed. They knew the rules, which is why they said, there's no harm for us. La dayra, that's a bold thing to say. It doesn't matter to us. That's literally like the equivalent of saying, so, you're going to do what you're going to do. We're returning back to our Lord. Some Muslims aren't like that today. Some Muslims, if they realize the death penalty, they say, well, let me look at my options. Martin Luther, when he was asked, the great hero of Protestant Christianity, he was facing Charles V, who had just become the Holy Roman Emperor, as well as Frederick the Wise and the representative of the Pope of his time. They had all of his books in front of them that they considered blasphemous and dangerous. They said to Martin Luther, did you write these? He said, please allow me 3 days to tender my answer. He needed 3 days to give a straight answer. Right? The magician said, no, we're going home to our Lord. It's no harm to us. That's real faith. Now we'll go over this last portion, and then we'll stop for Salah, inshallah. The Imam, rahimahullah, he then says, quote, and the Exalted One, he says, and we revealed to Musa that he hastened with my slaves so that you might be followed. And the Pharaoh sent out to pursue them from all the cities to gather his forces, to take care of this small and tiny troublesome people. But we caused them to come out and to take what was taken. So the Pharaoh and these people, he said that they are small people. The scholars of commentary say, those that exited from Egypt from the children of Israel and those who believed were 600,000. As for the army, we don't know the size. We don't have information regarding the size of the army. Ibn Jarir al-Tabari mentions that the angels were present on that day, as we shall find out regarding this sometime later. They marched forward, going eastward. So they were looking to take care of them by marching eastward towards them, and they prepared all stratagem of war for them, because لَجَمِيعٌ حَاضِرُونَ, meaning marching out with all stratagem of war, preparing themselves. And we caused the children of Israel to inherit, that is that Allah returned them back to Egypt after the drowning of the Pharaoh. And he gave them whatever Pharaoh and his people had. from properties and wealth. They took a hold of this and then moved further on, back towards the east again. Now they were followed along eastward. So as the sun was going east, because it had come up, the children of Israel, they were also going eastward in the direction of the sun. So this would mean that the children of Israel left that land before the zenith, but after sunrise, while the sun was still moving through its solar house. Close quote. Now what this is referring to then is the children of Israel. We can make a basic framework then. The children of Israel are leaving. They leave Egypt. They're going east. Now if you get a map and you look at what's east of Thebes, they're going to have to go into Arabia. They have to cross over into Arabia. So go east of that. They're actually moving out. Mushriqeen. They're moving out eastward. So the sun, as you know, well, as we have learned to know, follows a pathway in the sky after sunrise in which it moves through the solar houses eastward. When the sun reaches its zenith, it holds firm for about 10 minutes at the most. So the shadows either do not move or they completely disappear, depending on where you are on Earth. After that occurs, the sun then starts to come out of zenith. The moment that happens is where the dhuhr becomes fard to pray. The sun then starts going west. Right? So, we know that the children of Israel left Egypt after sunrise, and we know that they left before zenith. Why? Because the sun's still going east in its eastern pathway. Because the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. This is a fact that intelligent people don't deny. Right? Rises in the east, sets in the west. So if it had said that they went out maghribin, then that means they would have went out after midday. So we know the children of Israel went out morning time. Morning time. Before zenith, after sunrise, which means what? If we're talking about summertime, we're talking about sometime between 3 and 12. 3 a.m. and 12 p.m. We're talking winter, and there's a big discussion from the scholars, but we're talking winter, we're talking about sometime between maybe sunrise, you're talking about 8 a.m., something like that, 8 o'clock on the dot, and 12 o'clock or 12:30, somewhere between that time. That's what we're talking about. Right? Morning to opening afternoon. Right? So what we will do, inshallah, is we will stop here, pray, inshallah. So we say, أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم أستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم الحميم الراحمين ولا إله إلا الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على الرسول الكريم وبعد. We now return back to the text of the Imam rahimahullah. He brings us to our next point after he finishes commentary on ayat 60 of Surah Ash-Shu'ara. He says, quote, and so the Exalted One says further of this matter, فَلَمَّا تَرَاءَ الْجَمْعَانِ قَالَ أَصْحَابُ مُوسَى إِنَّ لَمُدْرَكُونَ قَالَ كَلَّا إِنَّ مَعِيَ رَبِّي سَيَهْدِينِ فأوحينا إلى موسى أن اضرب بعصاك البحر فانفلق فكان كل فرق كطرد العظيم وأزلفنا ثم الآخرين وأنجينا موسى ومن معه أجمعين ثم أغرقنا الآخرين إن في ذلك لآية وما كان أكثرهم مؤمنين وإن ربك لهو العزيز الرحيم واتل عليهم نبأ إبراهيم إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ما تعبدون قالوا نعبد أصناما فنظل لها عاكفين قال هل يسمعونكم إذ تدعون أو ينفعونكم أو يضرون قالوا بل وجدنا آباءنا كذلك يفعلون قال أرأيتم ما كنتم تعبدون أنتم وآباؤكم الأقدمون فإنهم عدو لي إلا رب العالمين الذي خلقني فهو يهدين والذي هو يطعمني ويسقين وإذا مرضت فهو يشفين والذي يميتني ثم يحيين والذي أطمع أن يغفر لي خطيئتي يوم الدين رب هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين. Whereas the two groups were seen, the companions of Musa said, "We've been found. We are sure to be finished now." He said in response, "No, by no means. My Lord is with me, and he shall certainly guide." We revealed to Musa that he should take his staff and strike the water, so it split. And for each group among them was a division for them to walk over, like a great mountain. Then we caused them to draw near, and the others came. We saved Musa and those with him altogether, but we drowned the others. Indeed, and that is a sign, and most of them did not believe. Indeed, your Lord, he is the Almighty, the most compassionate. Recite and narrate to them the information regarding Ibrahim when he said to his father and his people, "What are you worshipping?" They said, "We worship the idols, and we maintain them with fervency." He said, "Do they hear you when you call on them? Can they benefit you or harm you?" They said, "We found our fathers doing this likewise." He then said, "Don't you see what you worship, you and your fathers of old? Indeed, they're an enemy to me, all of them, except my Lord of all creation. The one who created me, he guided me. The one who feeds me, and he gives me something to drink. When I'm ill, he heals me. The one who shall cause me to die and then bring me back to life again. The one who I ask that he forgives me my sin on the day of resurrection. Lord, give me and bestow on me righteous judgment and make me among the pious." Surah Ash-Shu'ara, the 26th Surah, ayat 61 to 83. The Exalted One, upon making this statement, is talking about the two groups of people. When you saw the two groups, and they said for sure that they would be done for. Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam said, "By no means," meaning you'll never be done for. "My Lord is with me and he will guide," meaning he will guide me to the path that will save us. So he lifted his staff and the water was split into 12 pathways, like walls for the children of Israel to go across. And each part was split. And these divisions that split up into the 12 pathways, when the splits were made, they looked like mountains, because the word used, tard, means mountain. And those that came close during this time were drowned, and they were the people with the Pharaoh. Because they were near to one another, and they were drowned and ultimately destroyed. In that is a sign, meaning the destruction of the Pharaoh, his people, is a sign for those who come after. But most of them are not believers, meaning most of the people of Egypt were not believers at that time. The only people that there were as believers were the following. There was Asya bint Muzahim. There was also Khirbil. Whose other name was Shima'an. He was the believing man from the Pharaoh's household, from Surah Ghafir, the 40th Surah. Another believer was Fanna al-Mashita. Another believer was Midian. Midian was a woman who showed Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam where the bones of Nabiyuna Yusuf were stored. Midian. And this is the statement of Muqatil. Now, we do not plan on spending a large amount of time on the commentary regarding Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam and his travels, because we've already discussed this. So we won't mention this in two places when it's already been treated beforehand. What's clear is enough for the one who listens. Close quote. Now keep this in mind. You have to make a distinction between the words ummah and qawm. Qawm is a racial group of people. The Arabs, the Israelites, the Chinese, the Japanese. That's a qawm. That's a qawm. An ummah is a group of qawms gathered under one thing, usually religion. So the qawm of Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam was Ibrani, which is he was a Hebrew. He was an Israelite. Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salam, he was an Israelite. That was his qawm, right? But his ummah had both Egyptian converts to Islam in it and Israelites. Because look at the people that are believers. Only one of them was a Hebrew, which is Asya bint Muzahim. The others were not Hebrews. These were Egyptians. Yet they were believers in Nabiyuna Musa. So they were from the ummah of Nabiyuna Musa Islam, but they weren't from his qawm. Just like people today who are Muslims. There are most of the Muslims today are from the ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're not from his qawm because they're not Arabs. But the Arabs are from his qawm and his ummah. This distinction is being made because sometimes people assume that when Nabi Musa alayhi salam left Egypt, that every single of the people of the 600,000 with him was an Israelite. They weren't all Israelites. They were among the Israelites. They believed they were from his ummah. But some of them were Egyptians. Not every single person left with him was an Israelite. Not every single person. The vast majority were, but not every single person left with him was an Israelite. Some of them were Egyptians. That's why Allah says most of them didn't believe. Well, what does most mean? Most means that there were some that did. So just like the exception to the rule is proof of the general rule is also proof of the exception. If you say most of them did not believe, that means there are a tiny contingent that did. Right? So this needs to be kept in mind. It needs to be kept in mind. The Imam goes on, rahimahullah, to say, let us now look at the next ayah. After the story of Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam, where Allah says, and mention to them the narrative regarding Ibrahim. Now, Nabiyyuna Ibrahim, he asks his people, alayhi salam, do they hear your supplications when you call on them? Can they respond to your supplications? Can they benefit you when you worship them? Can they harm you if you do not worship them? Why are you following your fathers and doing taqleed of your ancestors of before? This is the type of taqleed he is referring to. Close quote. Now just a point here. There are two types of taqleed. Taqleed means to follow someone without having the evidence or detailed understanding of a matter. To follow someone without having the evidence or detailed understanding of a matter. That's what taqleed is. Ta, qaf, lam, ya, dal. Ya bil mad. Taqleed. Okay. Taqleed comes from the root qallada yuqallidu taqleedan. This is the sigha, the form. Okay. Qallada yuqallidu taqleedan. Qallada means to put a necklace on someone. Right? To do taqleed. Because we put a necklace on someone and you can't get it off unless you pull it off. Right? Qallada yuqallidu taqleedan yani qilada. Right? Necklace. The first type of taqleed is in theology. Taqleed in theology is impermissible. You don't say, I believe Allah is one because the Imam of my masjid told me. You believe Allah is one because that's what Allah has said in His book. You don't make taqleed in theology. Allah is one. The foundations of theology, you don't make taqleed in. Allah's oneness, the messengers being sent, the books being sent down. You don't make taqleed in foundational theology. Because if you do that, what's going to happen to you is what happened to these people. Because when Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam said, wait a minute, hold on, why are you worshiping these people? Because this is what our fathers did. That's taqleed in foundation theology. You can't do that. That's taqleed in foundational theology. You don't do that. That is haram to do that type of taqleed. The second type of taqleed is taqleed in law. Taqleed in law is permissible at some points and compulsory at other points. It's permissible at some points and compulsory at other points. Right? This is taqleed in law. Taqleed in law is permissible at some points. It is compulsory at other points. Compulsory at other points, we'll talk about main and plain issues. It's compulsory at other points because when you come into a house, we make taqleed of the fact that the surveyors, the builders, the stonemason, they did what they were supposed to do. We do not come into every building with a fear that the ceiling will come down. We didn't build it. We didn't see it built. We have no idea of knowing that it's safe. So how do we know that it's safe? Because we know the people that built buildings, that made these buildings, are trustworthy as far enough as we're able to gather. We don't have the detailed evidence on how they did it, what materials they used. We don't have that evidence. We are making taqleed. We make taqleed in medicine in many instances. We assume that the multivitamins that we take will not kill us. We assume that when we go to buy takeout, that the rice has been properly cooked, because if it hasn't, when you ingest it, you will die 5 hours later if rice is improperly cooked. We assume they've done this. This is compulsory taqleed. If you do not do this type of taqleed, civilization and the human race comes to an end. Because you have to do taqleed in these areas. Because in order for society to function, because if you stop and ask about each and every single thing, you will not be able to live your life. You must do taqleed. We do taqleed with regards to automotives. We do not assume that when we get in the car and we turn the key that there will be a massive explosion and we will be back with Allah. We assume that when we turn the engine over that it will start and we will drive. That is the assumption that we make. Many of us don't know the rudiments and finer details of combustion. We don't know how the engine works. And many of us are not interested in that. The main point that we're interested in is that it works when we tell it to work. The gas that we have running through our house, what's to stop it from coming through the cord, there being a leak, us going in front of the boiler to turn it on, there being a bright white flash, and us being in front of the angel of death. What's to stop that from happening? Taqleed. We are not Corgi registered engineers, so we assume that he's wired it up correctly. We do taqleed in our business dealings. When people open a shop or they open a large grocery store business, they're making taqleed and assuming that their employees are trustworthy. Yes, but sometimes employees steal. That's true. But the exception to the rule is the evidence of the general rule. By and large, all the employees aren't stealing in every business from the cash registers. Why? Because they're paid a wage. They're paid a wage. And they work that job. So the office manager, the person that builds that business, is making taqleed of his employees with the assumption that they're not going to steal the money, and for their remuneration, for counting the money, acting as cashiers, working as businessmen, working as clerks, secretaries, dock workers, bricklayers, that they will be paid at the end of the week. Now, how do they know that? They don't, but they make taqleed on the trustworthiness of the vast majority of people that they've hired. And the people that have been hired as employees, are they making taqleed of their employers? Yes, because they're making taqleed at the assumption at the end of the week that they will be paid, and that the employer won't tell them, actually, I've changed my mind, I'm not paying you. Why? Because most employers don't do that. Most employers do pay. Most employers pay at the end of the week or the end of the month or every 2 weeks. Most employers do that. If you do not do taqleed in these areas, you cannot function as a society. You make taqleed on the people that are locksmiths that build the house, and you assume that they don't have keys and that they'll return the night when you move in and kill you. You make taqleed and assume that that's not going to happen. You assume they're not going to sell your keys on to burglars. Now, does that happen sometimes? Yes, but the exception to the rule is proof of the general rule. So taqleed in law has to be done. It's permitted sometimes, and sometimes it's compulsory. It has to be done. I'm sitting at a desk with a chair. Why am I sitting in this chair? I don't know who made it. I don't know whether it's trustworthy. I could have sat in the chair, fallen back, fractured my skull, and been killed instantly. I could have sat down at this table, and the table could have come undone and sliced my arm open, and I could have bled to death. But I'm assuming the craftsmanship and workmanship of the brother that's brought it into the house is sound. Why? Because that brother has no reason to mean me any injury. So I make taqleed of him in this issue. Taqleed is compulsory in many instances. In certain aspects of our religion, in terms of law, it's necessary. There are 500 ahadith on salah. Do you know where all of them are located? If you don't, then it's probably not a good idea to mess around and do taqleed like the people before you've done. Right? Do you know all 1 million ahadith and the 500 collections they're found in? No. Many of us are happy by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favor that we know the names of the 6 collections. Those are in English, and we're really excited about that, let alone the ones that are older than more important and more powerful than those. The Sheikhs of Bukhari are greater than Bukhari, and they're not in English. We don't even know a lot of them. So this is why it's important that there's different aspects of taqleed. Right? So we'll stop here, inshallah. I say, يقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم استغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم الحمد الراحمين Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us because we've made it through 4 pages. And if we continue at this rate, inshallah, it looks like we might next week finish Surah Ash-Shu'ara. Allah has favored us. So it would be good if we could complete this before the onset, if we could complete another surah before the end of Sha'ban, because that would mean that we've completed Surah An-Naml, which would put us at the 28th surah, which is Surah Al-Qasas. And again, there's the narrative about Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam, but because we've gone through it in such depth, we're probably going to race right through that surah. Are there any questions over what we've covered today? Yes.
You said Maryam showed Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam the bones of Yusuf, Nabiyyuna Yusuf alayhi salam. Why did someone preserve his bones?
Okay, now that's a good question. The question is regarding Medium, an Egyptian woman named Medium, showing Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam the bones of Nabiyyuna Yusuf alayhi salam, his remains. Okay. Because idham, because azam means bones, but idham means remains, which would mean a body, right? His body, excuse me. I think that was a misstatement I made. His body, his idham, his remains. Now, why would that be there and why has that been preserved? Well, Nabiyyuna Yusuf alayhi salam was an Israelite, a Hebrew. So because he was a Hebrew, he would have been buried separate to the Egyptian people because he's not from those people. When Allah commanded the children of Israel to leave Egypt, that meant all of them. So Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam actually went and got Nabiyyuna Yusuf alayhi salam's remains and took them with him. Any dead Israelites that have been buried there, he took. When Allah said, all of you will leave, that's everybody. So now you go to what's called the State of Israel, you find the crypt of Nabiyyuna Yusuf alayhi salam. Where? In the land of Horeb. Why? Because they moved him from Egypt into Sham when they left. Because Allah said, I don't want any of you left back here. I want you to go forward and to take everyone with you. So Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam took everyone. Took everyone. Any other question? Yes.
In ayat 60, فَأَتْبَعُهُمْ مُشْرِقِينَ. Is that the people of the daytime? Is that what it's referring to, the word mushriqeen?
Yeah, mushriqeen, the people of the daytime. So that means they were making their move, they were traveling at that time. They were doing it at that time because it's in fa'il form, they're doing it.
So do you know the word like mashriq or maghrib, could that be used like how I would learn like sabahan and masa'an, could that be used instead of those then? Or
You could, but generally because it's saying mushriqeen, it means that they are doing it at that time. They're traveling at that time. They followed them.
okay.
Mushriqeen, they followed them eastward as well.
Okay.
So they're going eastward as well. If it said فَأَتْبَعَهُمْ مَغْرِبِينَ, they followed them east. Now the fact that it's using maghrib and mashriq is referring to eastward, but it's also referring to the relation of the sun.
Okay.
Because in Arabic, maghrib and mashriq are based upon what the sun does as well. In English, you hear east, west. You see, there's no value to that. In Arabic, when you hear maghrib, mashriq, right, that means the directions, sharq and gharb, but it also means the directions of the sun.
So the time as well.
That's it, the time as well. So that's why I had to go into that lengthy prosaical review, because it's like, so they're leaving Egypt. They're traveling when? Between this time. Otherwise, it wouldn't have said mushriqeen. They're traveling. If it said maghribeen, that means what? It's after Zawal, sometime between sunset and Zawal. So let's say it's summertime, 9:30, right? Sometime between 1 o'clock and 9:30, they've left Egypt and they're on the road. But it says mashriqeen because it's eastward, so they're going east. That means the sun is still traveling along the eastward track of the solar house, which means what? Sometime after sunrise and Zawal. So they left somewhere around that time. Yeah. Any other questions? No? So we'll pause here. Subhanakallahumma wa hamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Innahu ghafurur rahim yarhamir rahimin wa la ilaha illa Allah. Assalamu alaikum.